Hello and welcome to Real Menopause Talk. My guest today is Linda Davidson. After a stellar 15-year acting career, Linda entered the realm of tech and continues to lead and inspire. In this episode, we talk anxiety, zero libido, and how at nearly 58, she's still kicking it. And she certainly is. Linda, lovely to meet you.
Likewise. Thanks for having me, Hattie.
Would you like to start by telling us a little bit about yourself, where you come from, your background and family?
Yes. So, let's start at the beginning. I was in care between the ages of 6 and 13. And then I went back to live with my mum and left home at 16 and thought I was going to be a dancer on Blackpool Pier with Loretta Legg wearing feathers and bikinis. But I was watching a TV programme called A Kind of Loving, and it was set in the north of England. And it was the first time, other than Coronation Street, that I'd heard a northern accent on the telly. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to go down to London and be an actor. So me and my friend Julie, we got a bedsit in Balham and we packed our bags and ended up at Lime Street, which is the railway station in Liverpool. I got on the train and she didn't. And I don't know what it was that drove me to go, well, I'm still going. I guess I just followed my heart rather than the logic that was going on in my head, which was I can't possibly do that. I'm not even 17. But came down to London, got a job in a bar, got fired from the bar for pouring a pint of lager top over someone's head because he was pinching my bottom. Idiot. Mm-hmm. And then went to drama school and then spent 15 years as an actor. And then I was writing for Tomorrow's World. And I'm a girl that left school with no maths or English. So that was quite something in itself. And they were launching something called a website. And I didn't know what it was. And so I sat with the engineers and it blew my mind. And I had a career change. So I became part of the launch team for BBC Online. And then I got headhunted to go and work at Channel 4 to launch E4. Then went to Discovery. And then I set up my own consulting business because my son was little and I needed more flexibility than doing a global role at Discovery. So I was always on a plane. Then I went to Jamie Oliver and now I'm at Group M in a data and technology company, which is a subsidiary of WPP Group M called Choreograph. So I work in an operational role right at the bleeding edge of data science and artificial intelligence.
That is a phenomenal career path and all stellar moves, if a little bit unusual, which is awesome. I love that. And are you enjoying where you are at the moment?
Yeah, I absolutely love it. Of course, I'm the oldest person there by about 1 million decades. Lots of young people. It's a young person's industry and it's incredible to be working with them. They're all so clever. One of the initiatives that I'm working on, however, and something that I'm really passionate about is getting people from disadvantaged backgrounds, particularly like mine, coming into the media industry because they don't often see that as a place for themselves. So I launched the apprenticeship program, which was the first program at Group M last year. And this year we're scaling it up to be global. So we're taking interns in, but for a year in other markets, as well as having degree apprentices and master's apprentices coming in the UK that are funded by the levy. So we're just signed off today, actually, this morning, getting a cohort of data science degree apprentices. So they'll come in and do their data science degree with us, and they'll get their funding for their degree paid for by the apprenticeship levy. So they'll have no debt and they'll get paid a salary as well.
Gosh, that's fantastic.
So it's amazing. I know. It's just going to be brilliant. I'm taking in some project managers in my bit of the organisation as well. So they'll come in and do their degrees in project management for over a period of 3 years while working, earning while they learn, basically.
And do your interns have to come from a background of GCSEs or A-levels if they're not at degree level?
For the data science, the minimum requirement is maths A-level. They have to have that because otherwise they'd struggle with programming languages like Python, which use a lot of mathematical logic, unless they've been coding in their back bedroom for years and can already do Python. Then, fine. But no, for my project managers, there's no requirement to have any kind of qualification. The apprenticeship providers like maths and English, but I don't stipulate that. It would be a bit hypocritical of me to stipulate that that's a requirement, given that, well, I have got English now, but I didn't, given that I left school without it. So no, it's not a requirement. What is a requirement is an aptitude for the job and a commitment to stick it out for 3 years, because it is 3 years of learning. So it works out at a day a week learning and then doing a full-time role at the same time. So yes, on the data science side, no on the project management side.
I'm excited for whoever takes that up, because what an opportunity.
Yeah, and not everybody has a school-shaped brain, do they?
Mm-hmm.
And so if it doesn't work for you, there've got to be alternative routes. People have such views, don't they, of young people that don't go to university, and it's outmoded.
We're opening things up and changing them in many, many realms. So where are you in terms of menopause?
Well, I'm over it. I'm going to be 58 in a few minutes. So I think I stopped right at the average age. I didn't have a period for a year when I was 51. Saying that, though, I'm having a period right now, and I think it's because I didn't have put enough estrogen on over. I don't know why, but it's a hormonal. Sometimes apparently you can get breakthrough bleeding, but that's a bit odd. But my journey with the menopause started. I want to say 45, but it might have been earlier than that. And I went to the doctors because I was feeling off the scale anxious. I would get into these grooves of ridiculous worries that were just wouldn't have bothered me previously. I wasn't sleeping because they were just going round and round and round in my head, and I couldn't get them out. Gosh, if anybody's never suffered with anxiety, it is the worst thing. And so I went to the doctors and was treated for depression. So I went on antidepressants, and so I was on antidepressants until, well, I'm still on them, but a very mild dose now with HRT, and it works as a really good combination. When I was about 52, I was going for a walk with a friend who's a bit older than me, and I was telling her about the antidepressants and, going through the whole thing without any HRT. And she said, anxiety is a part of the menopause. And of course, I just thought it was hot flushes, which I'd had and experienced. Mm-hmm. I had them when I was when I went back to Channel 4, and I used to have a little hand fan on my desk that I'd stick down my cleavage. And I'd be in meetings. I'd literally putting my cardigan on and off about 39 times in an hour. And nobody ever said to me, shall I open a window? My face was bright red. I guess they just didn't think.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it was only after I went for a walk with her, and she said, anxiety is a symptom of the menopause and HRT will help you. So I went to see my GP, who immediately prescribed me with HRT. But then my libido dropped like a stone, and I wouldn't have been bothered if I'd never had sex again. I just was not interested, which was very confusing if you're in a marriage. And my husband thought I didn't fancy him, and it wasn't him. It was the fact that I didn't fancy anybody. And I guess that's the point when you get traded in for a younger model, isn't it? Generally speaking.
Yeah.
And so I was again talking with a girlfriend, and she said, well, I went privately and I got testosterone, and she takes a pea-sized amount every day, and it's improved her sex life. So I went privately. God, it was expensive, but worth it. Saved my marriage, because my libido is back to what it was. And yeah, it's a shame, really. I suppose chaps in a relationship could go and get testosterone for their women. I wouldn't recommend it, but I suppose they could on the NHS. But it's not prescribed on the NHS for women that have lost their libido through the menopause. And I feel quite strongly that it should be. I do feel quite passionate about that. Anyway, one of the things that I realised, and this was before Davina and before Mariella, I set up a Facebook group because nobody was talking about it. And even my women friends that are older than me didn't talk to me about it. And I was like, my best friend, Mary's 70, she's 71 now. And I've known her for 30 odd years. We were in a West End show together. And firstly, she didn't talk about it. And she must have been going through it when we were early, like in a decade after we were friends. But B, she didn't talk to me about it either. I was just really, we've spoken about it subsequently. I was like, why didn't we talk about this? So I set up a Facebook group, and also I teach a dance class locally. And so I've done a few sessions there where we talk, women come, and I focus on exercises for postmenopausal women, how to protect your bone density and your wrists and keep flexible, particularly around the hips and the wrists areas, because you don't want to be, and proprioception as well, because if you don't know where your body is, then later on you might fall over. So, and you can improve that. It's not something that you lose. You can improve it if you've not been practicing it. Like, so brushing your teeth with your other hand, for example, or throwing a ball from one hand to the other while standing on one foot. It all improves your proprioception. And so you know where your body is and you won't fall over. But my point for telling you this is that these women came to this to do exercise, and they just wanted to talk about their experiences. And so we got I just wrote Post-it notes and put them on the mirror in the studio. And the range, the rage, the anxiety, the hot flushes, the confusion, the brain fog, they're not sleeping, them thinking that they have to give up their job because they weren't performing, the lack of menopause policies in most organizations. It was just all of this unburdening of the fact that men didn't understand. There was nothing in the media about how their partners could support them going through the menopause. So I've been involved in my community about trying to open the conversation up. So I guess, and what was the other thing? I was at work and I had a flood. I don't know if other women have spoken to you about flooding. But in the beginning of my journey, I would flood. I would literally I had to put a Pampers nappy in my pants to get to work because I would just flood right through. I couldn't, normal sanitary protection wasn't helpful. Mm-hmm. And so I was having a flood at work and I rushed to the loo, and a woman said to me, a younger woman in her 30s said to me, "You okay?" And I said, "I'm having a menopausal moment." And she said, "Oh, a hot flush." Laughter, laughter, laughter. And I just thought, that's really interesting, because even her perception of the menopause is just a hot flush.
Yeah, interesting. I think it basically comes down to education. I was totally unprepared. And the flooding took me by such surprise. I had no idea what was going on. And I felt such shame because I thought, well, I've been having my period since I was 12 and a half. I should have a handle on this by now.
No, I felt shame as well. Total shame. And I think when these women came to the exercise session, shame was a word that was used a lot. Oh, that's just so utterly awful, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Just terrible that women feel like that. Yeah. I don't know how we educate and reach out to younger women, because I don't think they're ready to hear it when they're in their 30s or early 40s. And I don't think they're ready to hear, because you're so vital, full of womanhood, aren't you, when you're in your especially when you're early 40s.
Mm-hmm. And younger, you tend to feel that you're invincible. So prevention of osteoporosis or heart disease or looking after your cognitive function, certainly for me, I don't think it would have registered. That sounds more like something you might have to consider when you're 80, not when you're 30, 40, 50.
I know. My brother phoned me up. This is going back about a year now. So he's younger than me. He's 51 or something, but his partner's the same age, his wife. And he phoned me up and he went, "Lynn, what's that old lady thing?" And I went, "What do you mean?" He said, "You know, that old lady thing that women go through." And I said, "You mean the menopause, Paul?" And he went, yeah, that's it. I wanted to batter him.
Yeah, definitely. So we need to educate everybody so that it's not something to be feared, so that it's understood, so that we know that there are preventative measures we can take. I mean, basically looking after ourselves, which again, certainly in my 20s, I wasn't interested in. I was much more interested in having fun than taking care of myself. But that pendulum does swing over to the other side. It's also the perception outside what I've found to be the menopause bubble or menopause world, where we all talk about it very openly and educate each other, sympathise, empathise, and support one another when the going gets really tough, because it can do. How do you feel the media are currently portraying menopause?
I'm very grateful that Davina did her talk on it on Channel 4, her programme. And Mariella Frostrup's book, very enlightening too. There are quite a few podcasts now, and there are a few apps a plethora of apps actually aimed at the menopause. But what I would like is for older, women like Mariella and Davina, who are vibrant, 50 plus women, have got fabulous careers. I think they are doing a fantastic job. But I would like to see them and other women talking to their younger counterparts to help them understand. Jane Middlemas is another one that is very actively vocal in this space as well. You know, she's still seen as being quite a cool working female in that, you know, she does radio music, is big in the music scene. But she's also talking. But I'd like them to be talking to younger women and helping them understand what's in store for them without it being, you're going to have anxiety, you're going to have vaginal dryness, you're not going to want to have sex ever again, without it being that. But, you know, is that, you know, Jenny Eclair doing that ad for vaginal pessaries was groundbreaking. Last year, she did an advert for, not Vagisan, because it's Vagisil, I think. That's a vaginal lubrication. Groundbreaking, because essentially she was saying, I'm a woman in my 50s and I still want to have sex, but I can't unless I use this lubrication. And, you know, bravo to her for doing it. So yes, I'd like to see older women talk to younger women, but also I would like to see the male perspective represented and advice on how they can support the women in their life.
It doesn't take much to look after us. Like you said, when you were at work, nobody even bothered to ask, would you like the window open? So a little bit of awareness, a little bit of understanding, and suggest it. Or maybe you didn't want the window open, maybe you wanted it open and then closed again. But just asking, being sensitive to the people around them in a practical manner, because we don't want to be considered as the old lady, like your brother-in-law suggested, in the corner withering away. That's a miserable idea. But a window open or a glass of water being offered, or just little details that are simple acts of kindness every day to whoever you're with that might make life a little bit better. And if they understand that it is simply hormonal fluctuations, then maybe it just makes it simpler for men to understand.
That said, though, Hattie, I did open a window for a woman who was clearly having a hot flush. And I didn't make a meal of it. I just stood up, opened the window, and then once it had carried on with the meeting and the flow of the meeting. But once her face had stopped being bright red, went and closed it again. She went berserk with me afterwards. She said, I do not want you drawing attention to the fact that I'm having a hot flush in the workplace. And I reflected on that, and I thought, it's that word shame again. She felt ashamed in a working meeting that she couldn't control her hormones. You know, I completely understood what the sentiment of what she was saying was, don't shame me. Oh God, it's so hard, isn't it?
So we need to go even further and normalise it so that there is no longer shame attached. I feel that over time, it can mean that there's no shame attached to bodily functions. That's all they are. So how do you think we can raise awareness and understanding and generate a more sensitive and kind approach?
Well, you doing these podcasts is great because they can be published and then women can go to them in years to come. So that having that content out there that women can seek out, find, or men, and learn from, I think is great. Opening up the conversation in the workplace is vital. I work in the tech industry, so female representation is quite low. So it's definitely not talked about. And we don't have a menopause policy, which is something I'm trying to change. I think it's just about talking, isn't it? And giving women the space to talk about it. But also, I think I've got a duty to talk to the women on my team to be open and say, I'm through the menopause, or I don't have periods anymore, or, you know, I take HRT, you know, whatever it is, to normalise it in conversations in the workplace. So again, it's not hidden. But then again, you know, I think because there's going to be a drive in recruitment for adult returners to work, or more mature adults in the workplace because of the falling birth rates over the last 2-3 decades and the retirement age moving up a notch year on year. I think there is going to be a requirement to have older people in the workplace. And so I think that will start to normalise the conversation as well.
So to round off then, what would be your highlight of being the other side?
Getting my sex drive back again, not feeling so anxious, and still kicking it, you know, I guess.
Oh, Linda, thank you so much. And thank you very much for your time. It has been lovely to talk to you.
Likewise, great to. Thank you so much for doing this, Hattie. It's such an amazing, much needed initiative. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. Follow us on the podcast apps and click to subscribe. Remember, you can also sign up to the newsletter on the website so that you never miss an episode. Please continue to spread the word. Sharing the podcast and talking about menopause is the way to normalise this life phase of ours. Thank you for listening. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.